Oh, now, maybe. I would like to call our study session to order. We are going to have a great conversation about KPIs tonight. And Dr. Forlis, I'm going to let you frame our conversation.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I am fighting a cold, so just in case I'm talking through this crazy mask. But so it's bringing me back a while ago, and I'm so glad. I know. Boy, forget the struggle. So anyway, this evening we are going to be talking about key performance indicators, and Mrs. Hollins is going to walk us through a brief overview to bring everybody back to the why and how we got to where we are. And for many of us, this feels like a long time coming because we've been talking about this for quite some time. And as soon as we share these key performance indicators with you, I think what's most important to talk about is these are the metrics that we will use to guide our progress towards our strategic goals, our portrait of a graduate, and to deliver upon our promise to know our kids by name, serve them by strength and need so they graduate ready for college, career, and community. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Hollins, and the time has been designed to provide plenty of time for conversation and questions.
Thank you, Dr. Forlis, Governing Board. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share the work of many. I might be one voice, but this is the work of many. So the first thing I'd like to do is recognize two people sitting behind me, Dr. Robert Carlisle and Ms. Megan Eckstein, who are representing the research and evaluation team and the group that you may remember we called the KPI developers. And these individuals are the brains behind the numbers that I will be presenting to you tonight. And I just want to express my appreciation up front for all the work that they have done, including those who aren't here this evening, Christy Glassmeyer, Bryce Siegfried, and Paul Gibbs. And I think that's the group that has pretty much been working on it for us to be able to bring this to you this evening. So Chad, if you can put up the presentation. I am going to take you a little bit on, for me, a sentimental journey. I do want to make sure that everybody understands that coming to this conversation about our KPIs really is the culmination of many years of work, some of which were arrested a little bit by the pandemic. But I think the important part is that the fortitude was always there to continue on with the work, even when we had to do it sometimes in a virtual environment. So as you recall, you've heard this conversation from Dr. Forlis many times. In 2017, the Governing Board adopted the promise for Mesa Public Schools that every student in Mesa Public Schools is known by name, is served by strength and need, and graduates ready for college, career, and community. And that lofty goal meant that we needed to come up with a process that we were going to have to get there. So that led us to beginning a strategic planning process where we brought in a large group from the district, community members, students, and a governing board members to spend some time talking about what should the strategic plan for Mesa Public Schools look like. And to get there, we actually took a kind of a sidetrack and said, well, what does the promise really mean? And we defined that to be the portrait of a Mesa Public Schools graduate, where we have 3 essential attitudes and 5 essential skills that you see there. And that portrait has really been the North Star for us as we continued on the strategic planning process. What I'd actually like to do at this point is show you a clip from a video that we produced in 2019 where we introduced the portrait of a Mesa Public Schools graduate to the district. And it gives you a sense of all of the different levels of work that went into it. So Chad, if you could play that clip, please.
A strategic plan is a clear way of helping all stakeholders, all community members understand where the district wants to go, what resources it will need to get there, and more than anything else, it needs to represent an invitation for the community to support this work.
The Mesa Public Schools strategic plan is based on the portrait of a graduate, which will define the knowledge, skills, dispositions, and learning experiences that a Mesa Public Schools graduate needs to be ready for college, career, and community. The strategic planning process was guided by a steering committee that represented all stakeholders and has 4 important components. an assessment of the current state of learning in the district conducted by Dr. John Ross.
As we began this strategic plan, we needed to understand what are our needs. So Dr. John Ross came into our school district, and during his visits, he collected a lot of evidence around what learning looks like. From there, he gave us an assessment of our current reality of learning and then provided some recommendations. Those recommendations have been used by the Strategic Planning Steering Committee to craft the beginnings of a strategic plan.
This needs assessment led to recommendations for change from diverse work groups.
The strategic plan brings together voices from stakeholders across Mesa, whether it's educators, community members, students, parents, and we've asked them to be involved in this process through work groups and surveys and just general meetings, even in classrooms with students, to help us guide Mesa and push Mesa forward.
Each of the work groups produced a template that included recommendations and action steps about their topic. And these templates were synthesized into 4 overarching recommendations by looking for common threads and language throughout the recommendations and action steps. The process also included community input through facilitated discussions and surveys.
It is very important for micro families that we focus on values like responsibility, like inclusiveness, making sure that students have that foundation.
The synthesis of all this information by the steering committee led to the design of the draft portrait of a Mesa Public Schools graduate.
As I enter college, some of the skills I need to be successful are personal responsibility, resiliency, creative, and critical thinking, which are all part of the profile of a graduate.
I think that the hard work that this committee did, along with the work groups, will actually have long-lasting positive effect on our district and our students.
The strategic plan includes the voices of our community. And we find at Mesa Public Schools that our community is very much a part of our school district, and their voices are important. And this solidifies that we utilize those voices and we reach out for more input from our community.
So I hope that short clip helped you remember some of the work that has gone into getting us here today. There were so many voices, so many hours put into it. I thought it was appropriate that we just take a moment to remember all of the work that got us to what you're seeing here, which are our 5 strategic goals, which surround the portrait of a graduate. As you may recall in some of the conversations we had, the imagery of our strategic goals is that of a lens, because what we are doing with our 5 strategic goals is we are bringing the portrait of a graduate into focus, and we are assuring that the work we are doing is focused on that portrait and not the extraneous work that wouldn't be moving us forward. You may remember this graphic. We have used it several times, and what it does is it helps us remember all of the times we reached out to our community for information from them, the various surveys that we did, the various meetings that we held, the feedback loops that got us to the portrait of the graduate first, and then to our strategic goals. From there, we started talking about how all of these things build. Some of us see it well as a graphic, others needed it in a little more linear fashion, Dr. Forlis. So this is our nod to Dr. Forlis, because in her mind they are building blocks. And I think this is a beautiful representation of the fact that the 5 strategic goals build us to the portrait of a graduate, which will deliver on our promise. Then we entered into the cycle of KPIs, and this was the final cycle that we were part of the strategic planning process. And the KPIs, or key performance indicators, are the actual measures we will be using to ensure that we are growing and making progress toward those 5 strategic goals. And I went through these cycles with you in detail in a previous meeting, so I won't go through it in detail again, but I did want to remind you the fact that there were 3 significant cycles of feedback on the KPIs that included everybody from subject matter experts to community members to our administrators, to specific councils such as our equity council when needed. There were several of our KPI cycles that we actually did an extra loop on because we wanted to get some additional clarification. And we used a model that we shared with you previously about this idea of accordioning, right? So we would come up with what we believed were great model KPIs, and then we'd stretch that accordion out and go talk to different community members and stakeholders to ensure that it meant the same thing to them as we thought it meant to us. And then we'd bring that back in and we'd synthesize it down into our KPIs again, so that we were ensuring that our final data, our final information was in fact representing the input that they provided to us. And I think in cycle number 3, one of the most important things that we did was we conducted a comprehensive survey with over 7,000 responses, where we took our KPIs out to the community and asked them to reflect upon the clarity of it, their understanding of the KPIs, and most importantly, the importance of the KPI. So even though if it was very clear and understandable, we also wanted to understand from them how important they were. And that's how we got to the idea of having priority KPIs, primary, secondary KPIs, and now at this point, we are in the focus KPIs. So through our work with the board from January and then into spring and summer, we came to an agreement on 9 focus KPIs for 22-23. There's at least one in each of our 5 strategic goal areas: 2 in achieve, 3 in align. I'll note that the 3rd one in align was actually an addition after our last conversation with the board, which is the one that looks at the percent of funds that is spent in direct service of students. There is 1 in our equity goal, 1 in engage, and 2 in ignite a culture of learning and well-being. And hopefully those are starting to look familiar to you at this point. This slide should look familiar. I use it every time we talk about the KPIs because this was the final step in the journey, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight, and I'm really excited that we have finally taken that. And that is that it is about defining the measures that we were going to use for each KPI, determining what our baseline is for that KPI, how do we define success, and how we're gauging progress. And then finally, to launch a KPI, we've had a little bit of a terminology change, an externally facing scorecard so our community knows how we're doing, and then we will have an internally facing dashboard so that we can all be working with data that's specific to us to help move the district level KPI forward. Dr. Forlis has a theory of action about our 5 strategic goals, and that is, if we create a sense of belonging by igniting a culture of learning and well-being, if we maintain the trust and transparency of our community by engaging them, if we align our resources to ensure equitable opportunities for all, then we will deliver on our promise and our students will graduate ready for college, career, and community. I've heard that I don't know how many times. I've heard our promise, I don't know how many times. And you know, last night, for the first time, I had such an aha moment about the fact that the theory of action is a direct parallel to the promise. Because we talk about igniting a culture of learning and well-being, that's knowing our students by name. Aligning our resources, engaging our community, and equity is serving them by strength and need. And then the final goal is about having them ready to graduate from college, career, and community. So I don't know if that has resonated with all of you before, but boy, I had such a great aha moment last night, and I was like, I hope I'm not the first person to think about that. But I bring that up.
I've been seeing the light.
Yes, the light has, yes. But I bring that up because that is the order that we're going to talk about the KPIs in tonight. We're going to talk about the theory of action because the other thing is none of our KPIs stand in isolation of each other. Every KPI is in some way dependent upon the other KPIs, and it's only about the synthesis of all of them together that truly will bring the outcomes that we want. So that's why I bring that forward. The other thing I want to point out before we start talking about the actual KPIs is when we describe our strategic plan and we describe each of our goals, we talk about the matrix that it lives in. We talk about the fact that it is built on, it's student-centered and it's competency-based. So you can enter our strategic goals at the point you are, and our hope is that there is growth and there is gain that happens in the strategic goals. So we built our KPI progress matrix the exact same way. Instead of just setting hard and fast numbers, we talked about how are we going to look at our progress through the KPI, how are we going to reward our growth, and how are we going to know when it's time to reset a KPI perhaps. So the work that you'll see tonight is all based on this idea of what is the measure we are going to use, what is the baseline, which is where we're at today. We are going to present targets for growth over 5 years. And then you will either see what I'll call a 5-point range of progress or a 2. In some of the cases, the KPIs make more sense to discuss our growth over time, and in other ones, it makes more sense to just understand, have we reached what we consider to be the appropriate level, and we want to make sure we stay there. So you'll either see the KPIs presented in one of those 2 ways. So let's get started. Any questions before I get started? Comments, concerns? Okay, we're good. Okay, so first, increase the percent of students who say they feel they belong at school. The way we are going to measure that, we've talked about this before when we were talking about pay for performance, is the percent of responses that are the 3 positive choices on student sense of belonging items on the end of the year survey. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is what is that range of growth that we will be looking for. And as you can probably guess, red means we're not happy at being at that level. Green means we should maintain and grow if possible. So as a leadership team, we have set each of these boundaries for these KPIs. For the first one, less than 75% is not an acceptable range to be in. At least 75% of our students need to feel a sense of belonging. And our goal is that we will be maintaining when we are at 95% or better. So that's how these charts work. What is unacceptable, what is maintenance, and then how we will grow through that depending on where our baseline is. So for this particular one, our baseline is 79, and that is based on the end of the year student survey that was done for 2022. So that puts us in the light red. We are certainly greater than 75, but we are not where we need to be. So you'll see that is color-coded to the second category. And then we have targets that we have set for the next 5 years to get us there. We feel that it's very important that we grow our sense of belonging in our students as quickly as possible. So we have set a target that we will get there in 3 years. And then we did an analysis to determine what we believe our growth rate needs to be in each of those 3 years to get us to the 95%, which is the chart that you see below. So our goal is that next year we will be in the yellow range, and then we will move into the light green range, and then by that 3rd year we should be at 95% and holding steady. While we will continue to maintain and monitor this KPI, once we hit the steady state of 95 or better, that'll be a great opportunity for us to talk about what's the next KPI we want to move up into the focus range. Because we have a whole list of them, as you recall. We've got lots of KPIs that weave that fabric of success for Mesa Public Schools. For sense of belonging for our employees, we have a similar measure using the survey that we do for our employees at the end of the year. We've set the same exact progress goals for ourselves, 75% to 95%. In our employee survey at the end of the year, we were at 75%. So we just barely are in that light pink. We still feel that that is an incredibly important KPI to grow. So we have set ourselves the goal to grow to 95% in 3 years. A little bit steeper of a curve for us. We know we have a little bit more work to do in this area. So we will be working on what are our strategies and tactics that will allow us to grow to that point. We will disaggregate our data to make sure that we are focusing on those sets of employees that maybe have the least sense of belonging, and working with them and talking to them about how we can grow that sense of belonging in their world. So those are our two Ignite goals. Are there questions on those before I move on to the engage our community goal? Okay. For engaging our community, our KPI is to increase the percent of families who say they have easy access to engage or communicate with school and district personnel. As you can see, we have a little bit of a pattern happening here, that any of these, we feel it's very important that at least 3/4 of our families can respond in a positive format to that, and our goal is, of course, to be as high as possible at 95. Now, this is a KPI that we didn't have a measure for last year. So I do not have end of the year survey data for these particular questions. We've surveyed parents, but not for this particular KPI. So this year, we added it to the beginning of the year survey. So this is hot off the press data. It is beginning of the year data, and I need to put that asterisk there because we certainly would intend to see growth over the course of a year as our families get to know us and become more familiar. You certainly would expect that they would have it a greater ease of access. But what's more important to us is that year over year we are growing. So in this situation, we'll be using the 68% more as a leading indicator as opposed to a lagging indicator. The leading indicator helps us understand that we've got work to do in this one to hopefully grow us by the end of the year to get to a greater level, and then we'll look for how do we grow over year to year. So I did want to point that out because it won't be a full year's worth of growth in this particular one. After this year, which is the initial year, we will be able to share full growth targets on that one. We have set preliminaries and estimates based on that 68%. So even though we know that this one is one that has to be modified over time, we didn't say, well, we'll just wait till next year. We still set ourselves growth targets for it. The next three are in the align category. And the first one of this is to increase or maintain the retention rate of quality employees. And I will ask Mr. Wing to please jump in on this one if I misspeak or don't give a full enough picture of it. But retention is an interesting question because unlike wanting to maximize all the ones that we've just recently spoke, in this case we believe there's a bit of a sweet spot where you want to retain as many employees as possible to ensure the continuity of the organization, the efficiency of the organization, but you're always going to have turnover. Retirees is one of the best examples of turnover that is, while it impacts the organization, it's a good thing that you have individuals who have had a career with you and you're able to celebrate their retirement with them. In other cases, sometimes there are employees that once they get here, there's a mutual understanding it might not have been the best fit for them. So we're not going to necessarily retain every employee that we hire. What we want to do is make sure we retain the most and the best that we can that makes sense. So you'll see here, we have this listed as an estimate right now. We're doing a little bit more research on out in industry, what is an ideal or a preferred retention rate, as well as we're waiting to see what our preliminary data looks like when we do our calculation. Justin, anything you want to add there? Okay. So we did calculate a baseline. This is a hot off the press number, so I left it as an estimate right now because we do want to go back and validate some of this data to ensure that this is this is in fact the final baseline that we'll be using. But right now we are showing that our retention rate of employees year over year from last year to this year is 66%. And then we have not set, well, we've set some data there, but we're going to wait and make sure that we've got the appropriate information before we do a final set on that. The next Align one is also about employees from a slightly different angle. The original one that we brought to you in the spring and throughout the summer was to improve recruitment practices to maximize the number of qualified applicants. One of the things I love about our strategic plan and the work that we do is when we realize that we might have missed the mark slightly, we're willing to talk about what should it be and then bring a change if necessary. So as we talked about this, we realized that the real impetus of having a KPI about attracting employees is because an open position impacts the district negatively. Work doesn't get done. A substitute teacher is in the classroom. So we are changing the language of this KPI to say improve recruitment practices to minimize position vacancies. It looks at it, similar idea, looking at it from a different angle. And the measure that we're going to use is the average number of work days that positions are vacant. And that will help us look at when we have a vacancy that seems long, we can go in and look at all of the different windows of time that made that vacancy lengthy, and look at how we can minimize those windows and keep those positions closed. In an ideal situation, where by the time the person who resigned is gone, the next individual is ready to start that job, and we don't miss a beat other than the onboarding piece of it. So that's where we are. We do not have our initial calculation for that, so we are working on this KPI, and we hope to have it. I'm going to look at Megan because she's my calculator. We will have it as soon as possible. I know she said she's got some initial data that she's working on that we should be able to provide this one. And in the last Align KPI, it is increase or maintain the percent of funds spent in direct service of students. And the formula we are using for this is we are using the Auditor General's definitions of spending in the classroom. However, we are using M&O and classroom site fund dollars to do the calculation because those are the funds that the governing board designates and controls the budget of. So this way we are looking at those dollars that we have the impact of, as opposed to the Auditor General, which looks at all funds, including funds that are already designated for certain uses. So again, our KPIs are about how do we get better, not how are we measured against an outside entity. So this is about us improving us, which is why we chose to do that.
So I have a quick question. So it
Sure.
looks like, we're already in the green. And this is very important to me, but moving forward, I'm just wondering why the need to keep this still as a KPI if we're already seeing the green. I just really would like to know.
That's a great question. And it will always be a KPI. It may not be a focus KPI now
Yeah.
that we know that we're in the green. To be honest, we chose it before we knew what the results were going to be.
Okay.
So now that we know, and Mr. Thompson has done a pretty significant analysis of the stability of that in Mesa Public Schools, and the analysis shows that historically we've been stable. That should be an indicator that going forward we should be stable. So we may say that this one comes off as a focus KPI, and do we
choose
need another
another.
Align, or do we just focus on the two that we have? Because those other two are big KPIs for us.
Okay, thank you.
I think I would also think of it as an accountability of just maintaining that as something we're always looking at as we look at the budget. So as you get budget reports, as we report out on our budget process, this will always be a KPI we'll be referencing to further the goal of continuing to focus the dollars. And at some point, maybe down the way we adjust it if we feel like it needs to be adjusted. It's just a starting point at this point.
I think it does say increase. So, I mean, the goal is not just to maintaining is the least desirable outcome, right? We want to increase it. So I like keeping it because we hope to grow that number that we're funneling more. So
The numbers need to change then, because they're all just 70 plus. If that's our goal.
I see what you're saying.
One of the things I'm focusing on is there's how much is spent actually in the classroom, directly in the classroom. Then there's another category, which is things like counselors, social workers, direct services to students. And then there's a third one, which is a little less connected to the classroom and includes things like special ed administrators and curriculum specialists or something like that. So if we're high on this, maybe focus on the first two, which is how much is actually being spent in the classroom, how much is being spent on things like counselors and social workers and those who are providing direct services to the students, and focus on that, because that might be something we would want to increase. And that would be my suggestion. As long as I'm talking, the metrics, the previous slide, or 2 or 3 ago before we stopped for questions, you included retirees. Could you exclude those who you know are starting on ASRS, because you get reports from them? So exclude them from the calculation. So those, either count those students, those employees who enter into the retirement system, not who are old enough, but who actually got entered into ASRS, as either continuing, or just exclude them from the numerator and denominator, and that would give you a better idea, excluding people who are entering the retirement system. So that's just a suggestion.
If they are retiring and returning, they're in the numerator. So that, because they're not negatively affecting the fact that we have an open position, or so they are in the numerator, yes.
Yes, if they're retiring, but you mentioned that the reason why you don't have enough people continuing is because you have so many retirees. So my suggestion is, one way of adjusting for that, those who enter ASRS and are not working for us anymore, just take them out of the equation, or count them as if they were still working. I wouldn't do that, but that's, I guess, the other alternative.
So I didn't mean to imply that we had so many retirees that, I'm sorry if that's what it sounded like. No, I was just mentioning the fact that even though a retiree is a positive thing, it is still an impact on the organization, because we have to hire somebody and train somebody. So we originally did have them excluded from the denominator, and then as we talked about what the true essence of the KPI is, we put them back in the denominator because of the impact on the organization.
Plus, do you exclude medical reasons when we know about medical reasons? Spouse got relocated, military to Georgia. I mean, when do you stop? So we kind of said there are some individuals who've retired with another system and committed to us for 1 year. You know, how do we capture that? So those are root causes to the retention rate. We didn't want to. We wanted to prioritize. So you'll see a lower percent because we're including.
I only mentioned that because she mentioned we have all these retirees. That's why we're never going to get high. So
fair. I got it.
I don't, in checking about that KPI, the retiree that doesn't come back, I think we need to investigate that. That the retiree leaves with a volume of expertise, as well as connections with the community, with that school. I think we need to make sure that we still keep data on why people might retire and why they don't stay. The second thing is checking in with industry on the 75%. We are not an industry. We are about people, and we, most importantly, are about little people. Stability matters in education. We all know that. So I'm a little bit wary of looking at industry could we possibly look at other educational institutions that could be a model rather than industry? Because when you're making widgets, relationships don't matter necessarily as much as when you're working with children. And I'm just a little wary of that, of looking at industry. So if we could, maybe expand it to other educational institutions, that would alleviate a little bit of anxiety that I have about that number.
Considering education, the education field, the issue we have is COVID and the labor shortage throughout the nation. So there's not really good data. We've seen quite a few reports around 75% is typical. I can't confirm or deny that in 2022 that is typical or not.
Having been on a faculty, 75% would have been a tumultuous year. So, and kids thrive on stability. And so I think we have to really look at that aspect carefully. And I was reading a report today about the workforce and where did everybody go. I mean, it's super important, and you face many challenges. I don't mean to negate that at all, but we've really got to work hard on particularly, I believe, retention.
The other part too is how we calculate retention. There's different formulas, and we're looking at all employees not returning the following year, not May 1st. We had this discussion, let's do a point in time. So if we hire somebody who's only able to work with us for 3 months and they leave and we hire somebody else, that's 2 people versus 1 person. So we're encompassing more in this formula as well. That may not be typical depending on the retention rate research that you find.
Okay, moving on to our Ensure Equity KPI, and that is to implement a system of supports at schools to meet the needs of all learners. This is an interesting one because we just kicked it off today. Very exciting in the leading learning meetings. We were able to share this KPI with our school leaders and explain the purpose of it. So the state of Arizona has, I think it's a state thing, right, Tracy? The state of Arizona has a rubric for the implementation of multi-tiered systems of support. So what we have asked our leadership to do is for each of our schools to go back and meet with their leadership team and to score themselves on where they are in implementing the MTSS model. And we know some schools will be novices in that, but that will give us our baseline. So they are actually completing that data for us. We will have it done by the end of September, which will give us a baseline data for it. The way we have done it, there's 4 categories in the MTSS rubric, everything from have not yet started to sustaining and innovating. We've given that a score of 0 for the lowest category, 3 for the highest category. There are 6 categories with 25 areas that they score themselves in. Highest score they can get would be 0. Highest score is 0. Lowest score they can get is a 0. The highest score they could get is a 75. So as we look to the fact that this is actually an implementation KPI, what we have done is we have said, ideally, we would like our schools to begin by moving into being fully in that we're implementing mode. That would be a score of 25 if they scored every single one like that. By the time we are, I would say, fully vested in our implementation, we would hope that everybody is in the solid, committed mode and moving toward we are sustaining and actually innovating in MTSS. So we have set this first progress standard for MTSS to be from 26 to 50. And the beauty of this is as we grow, if the implementation goes faster, we can look at modifying what we would consider to be the green score, wanting them to get higher. If it's taking a little bit longer, we take a few extra years to do this. So the idea is that we can modify the progress meter as well as the targets, depending on our annual feedback that we get. So that's why these all say estimate, because we don't even have our baseline data yet for this one, but we will have it in about 2 weeks.
I just have a quick question as to where, let's say they're still in the red zone. Where do the schools reach out to get the support to help them increase this KPI?
I'm going to look at my friends.
Hi. They would come to any one of us for support, and then we would have some conversations, go into their rubric to see what it is their need is, and then figure out what resources or support they need coming from us.
And then our last two KPIs are in the Achieve strategic goal. The first one is increase the percent of students who are proficient in grade level standards. And the measure of that, this should sound familiar, we reviewed this with you earlier, it's the percent of K through 11 state and district end of year assessments scored as proficient or better, or the equivalent of that if the rubric is not a proficiency rubric. As you may recall during the pay for performance discussion, this amounts to approximately 140,000 assessments. A student can have taken anywhere from 1 to, I think, 4 of those assessments. So please know that this percent is not a student percentage, this is an assessment percentage. We have set the range there for less than 40 to 70 or above is our target over the course of 5 years. Our baseline data is 32. That means 32% of the assessments that our students took end of year 2022, they scored proficient or better. Our goals for this one and our targets is to move us as quickly as possible into the yellow zone and then into the green zone. Again, we did a calculation of what we believe the rate of achievement needs to be so that we can reach that 70% or greater within the 5-year measure. I have attached as a link there on the bottom left a list of all of the assessments that we are including in this calculation. And then the final one, the culminating one, is to increase the percent of students who graduate on time. We are going to use the graduation rate that we pull as 4-year graduates, and our targets there are between 75 and the goal of 95% graduation rate. We are currently sitting at 76%. As you know, the final graduation rate for the previous school year is not quite published yet from the state, but this is what when we pull the data, what we have today. So if anything, it would just go up. It shouldn't go down because it would just be including students who were able to complete their credits maybe through summer school. There's a certain deadline they have while they can still be counted as a 4-year graduate. So we're just waiting for that final number. And then we have set our goals to get us to the 95%. And we know that this is a lofty goal. We know that this is probably if you were going to ask me what stretch goal have we set, this is certainly a stretch goal on our part, but I'll remind you that all the KPIs are driving us to this one. So that's why building upon each of these KPIs is so important, because they are interlocked, they are affecting each other, and will get us to the point that our students are graduating ready for college, career, and community. So that is the summary of the 9 focus KPIs. Oops, they took off my slideshow, but we're going to go to a website. Chad, if you can see it, okay. So one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure the community understands where are we on these KPIs. So what you are looking at is the draft. And I'm going to say draft, I couldn't stamp it across it, or I would have. The draft scorecard for our community. And it is just the summary of everything I showed you this evening, KPI by KPI. It defines the KPI. It tells the community where we are on that KPI. what our targets are for 5 years, and when we feel that we are maintaining at a level that we are pleased and satisfied. It's a phrase I heard recently that I thought was a really great phrase, because sometimes we're pleased with our growth, but we're not satisfied with our growth. So I look at those curves that I shared with you, that if we hit those, we're going to be pleased. And when we get to that green one at the end, we're going to be satisfied. And then we're going to look at how do we get better again. So I really love that imagery. What I really am appreciative of R&E and would like to show is, Chad, if you can scroll up to the first green bar again. Yep. And if you would click on the words in the green. Click yes, that you want to be redirected. What we have done to help them understand the data is we have broken down that grade level standard one by grade level. So you can see, how is kindergarten across Mesa Public Schools doing? How's first grade, second grade? So we have done it by grade level. One of the important things to remember is these are district level KPIs. So from an external standpoint, we wouldn't show this by school, because it's not a school KPI, it is a district KPI. And what builds to the 32 is our individual grade levels. So each of the 9 KPIs, except maybe one of the aligned resources, will have a drill down for them. Some of them are here this evening, some of them are not. I wanted to show you this one so you would understand that we're going to also provide some drill down data so that our community can better understand why our data is what it is. So we're very excited about that. And this will be live. As soon as we have validated all of our data, this will go live on our website. And then the last piece I wanted to talk about is the dashboard. So while this is our external facing scorecard, what we are also going to do is we are also going to develop an internal facing dashboard on our dashboard platform, which will allow our leadership, our school leadership, et cetera, to really dig into the data based on the KPIs to understand how their work and how their particular situation in their school or department will help them move the district KPI forward. Great example of how that might work is, while we were doing training this summer with classified leadership, I showed them how to use, because some of the data is already on the dashboard, and one of that is the data from the employee SEL survey lives on our dashboard. So I took the opportunity to show our classified leadership how to go into that dashboard and drill down to look at specifically how the individuals in their department responded to the SEL survey, so they could see what in particular their people needed to develop a greater sense of belonging or feel recognized, et cetera. And it was really powerful. They were like, oh my gosh, this is incredible information to be able to know about ourselves. So that's what we're looking forward to, is building this KPI dashboard for those internal discussions that we'll be able to have and really look toward moving us forward, so we will hit the targets I shared with you this evening, so that we will be successful for our strategic goals. So with that, I am done, and I don't think I saved nearly the amount of time Dr. Forlis was hoping I would, but we are open for discussion, conversation, and all my colleagues here have fingerprints all over this, so this is not my work. This is, I drew the short straw.
Mrs. Hollins, did you give us an estimate on a time when you think this might be on our website?
I'm hoping that it'll be up no later than when we come back from fall break.
Okay, all right. And then I have one more quick question, and I think it's probably for Dr. Forlis as well as you. I'm interested in not only getting updates on the progress, but I would really be interested, since you just mentioned how there will be data and people will be able to disaggregate the data for their own schools or for their own departments. I would like updates on how people are going from the initial goal. I want to know the how. What's working, what's not working, so that we can be sharing between schools and between departments. and it would be really beneficial as a board member to know, for example, an employee's sense of well-being. Okay, what did this department do? What did that school do? The how is infinitely important to me, so that we can build a system. We can build systems.
So the strategies and tactics and the outcomes for sure. And I'm going to tell you, if you want to know the hows, follow us on social media and make sure you follow hashtag MPS Ignite, hashtag MPS Achieve, hashtag for each of those 5 goals, because that was a challenge we put out to our leadership team at the beginning of the year, and we continue to follow, is that when they believe they are posting something that demonstrates our 5 goals, put that hashtag on it, and you will see some amazing stories.
I guess I would say too that, I mean, that's interesting for us to know, and maybe some of that can come to Andy's status. I don't think, and I think, but what I think it's more important is that the campuses know what, we don't need to insert ourselves, we don't mean to insert ourselves as all information must flow through the governing board. But we want to make sure that if a school is doing really great work, that is available to those other campuses. And so,
yes,
and that kind of sharing. So it can be internal, that can be on the dashboard, not the scorecard necessarily, right? It can be internal facing, so that schools can say, hey, here's how we that growth, and here's how we did it. But I love the idea that first of all, I think it's been long overdue that we have, we can go down school by school to see how they're doing, and that we can show the public a real time, here's our goals, here's how we're doing, a progress report on ourselves. I think that's long overdue, but I also think I think the internal facing dashboard is going to be what inspires them all to nobody needs to, we are a team, we are all working towards that same goal. And so when one principal has a great idea, it gets widely shared, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
And President Richardson, if I can add to that comment about sharing amongst campuses, we have some systems in place that help us with that. So one is our regional team meetings, and so we have principals in by area, 5-6 principals together, and they come together several times in a quarter. And that's an opportunity for them to walk through classrooms at that site. And the principal who is hosting has an opportunity to highlight different things happening on their campus. And then the others can share and learn. And great things have come from that. Principals walk away and say, hey, I've got a kindergarten teacher that would really benefit from that. And then they make deals and find a way to get the kindergarten teacher over there. But we also have leading learning meetings that are held quarterly. We had one today. And we put our principals, our leaders, in groups, and they have the opportunity to talk about what's happening on their campus. For example, today they went through a lesson on not only MTSS rubric and how to assess your school, but also we took a deep dive into FastBridge data. And we had some folks from teaching and learning on hand to help our leaders navigate through what does that data mean? How do you pull it up by school, by grade level, by teacher, and then drill down to individual students? And so the principals had the opportunity not only to see the data, but have conversations, more importantly, have conversations with each other about how they're using that data to move the needle on their campus.
Years ago, I love, it's like educational rounds. We're still doing them. It's good. Perfect. Thank you.
So first of all, just wanted to say thank you. I know this is a lot of work, and I just wanted to express appreciation. Also, it's very important that decisions are driven by data. So I'm very happy to see this. What I do want to know is, we've talked about accountability throughout the year. So will there be updates quarterly, or how are these checks coming? Because again, waiting for a whole year, I think we've missed some things if we wait till the very end of the year. So because we have FastBridge and School City, are we using that data to kind of drive through the year? Because then if we have schools that are maybe falling behind, we can say, okay, what's going on here? Is it attendance? Is it this? Is it that? How do we troubleshoot rather than losing a whole year for a child?
That's a great question, and it's exactly what you said, is there are some pieces of data that we consider to be leading indicators. They're predictive of what we believe we would see at the end, and then there's other which are lagging indicators, meaning we take the temperature at the end, it is what it is. So it's about identifying and using those leading indicators, FastBridge, our benchmarks, et cetera, so that we are targeting those students that are not being successful with the appropriate interventions or supports or even enrichments when they need it and how they need it.
And if I can
So
add to
you're
that-
saying we're going to be seeing updates quarterly on our dashboard or the scorecard, or how will that happen?
Well, I'm not sure if you want to take that one.
I'll take the scorecard piece of it. Right now, I don't anticipate a quarterly update on the scorecard because most of the measures are about end of year. So we will be monitoring and making progress, but you will see it based on end of year. So for example, the one that I just said about students being on grade level standards, we will have to wait until the spring assessments to change the scorecard. However, it's the work that we're doing all year long to move the students forward. That's the important piece that is being monitored from the area superintendents, the principals, the data strategists. That's all the internal work that'll be going on throughout the year.
That will be visible on the dashboard? Is that? I guess I'm just wondering how,
So I'll jump in for just a second, and then I know Monica wants to speak detail as well. Every quarter, we'll be doing an update to the governing board on student learning data, so that you'll get a first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter snapshot that will lead up to the scorecard. I'm getting all my words right. The scorecard that will be publicly facing on our website. So that is our commitment of those data discussions with the board. So those will come to you quarterly. And in addition, and Monica wants to talk about the work they're doing to support.
So as areas, we meet regularly with principals, and the beginning of this year, we've started to dig into a more global view of data. So our data specialists have met with all of our principals to really dig into what that longitudinal data looks like. And then we've met with them to dig into that data so that they can actually create focus areas and targets and theories of action. They've actually each created a theory of actions to dig into that and really follow student data. So in our regular visits, we'll be reaching into that, digging in and seeing where is that progress, what's happening. So we are regularly looking at data with them to make sure that we can support them and figure out what their needs are on their campus.
Any other thoughts or questions? We echo Mrs. Ellingson's thanks. It has been Herculean task times 3. This is 3.0, right? But I feel like you've gotten so much input that it's almost it had to have felt overwhelming to try to synthesize everyone's input. But I feel like it's made it better. I feel like you've done a good job, and we've gotten to a point where this feels like this is good data, this is good results based, and this is something that for a year we can focus on. And it was a better idea than initially, where it was like we had, 82 KPIs and we were trying to get them all, and stuff, but we're focused. These are the ones we're focusing on this year, so we need the KPIs for this year. And then we won't ignore those, but we have these written. We'll be able to continue to monitor those while we actually have other focus. And I love that part of growing with what our needs are instead of arbitrarily deciding here's what our goals are for all these areas, because I just over and over I think when we try to do everything, we're not very successful at anything. So we want to be this is what we've decided we want to be super successful on this year, and I think that's a great outcome of some of this conversation. So all right, if there's no other conversation, I'll ask for everybody you're going to vote in a minute. We need to excuse Mrs. Head. We hope she's not watching our movie and that she's sleeping and resting. But the rest of us are going to get on and I need a motion to adjourn this study session.
So move.
Thank you, Mrs. Sears. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. O'Reilly. Now, Ms. Kirby will call for our vote.
Donna is doing a voice vote. Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And it 5-0. Good job. Good job, Cameo, on your first vote. Yay. Success. You did awesome. Okay, this meeting is adjourned, which means everybody go up to your thing, click regular meeting, view the agenda. Don't stand up yet. We all stand up. We are going to call our meeting to order. Or stand up. We're going to have a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. We are going to postpone our pledge until the start of our regular meeting because I'm going to call our meeting to order, and we will. Oh, there we go. My computer couldn't keep up with us either. This meeting's a little different because we're going to first consider going into an executive session. And so the board will consider moving into executive session pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.03A1, employment matters, where the board would discuss the superintendent's 2022 to 2023 pay for performance goals. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I move we go into executive session.
Thank you, Dr. O'Reilly. And a second?
I'll second.
Hutchinson. Cameo will call for our vote.
I vote yay. Mrs. Sears?
That vote passes 5-0. So just a little scheduling note. We are going to, in 25 minutes, we will pause that executive session and come back into regular meeting so that our regular meeting can go according to plan. So we will be back at 6:30. Thank you. we? Hey, there we are. Welcome back to our meeting that is already in progress. We will have the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Wing, and then the national anthem will be sung for us by the Red Mountain High School La Camarada.
Good evening. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag Thank you very much. That was beautiful. We'll have a short video on our governing board meeting procedures.
Welcome to the Mesa Public Schools Governing Board meeting. We appreciate your interest in the district. The 5 elected governing board members serve without compensation and volunteer countless hours. The president and the clerk of the board are elected in January. Under state law, the governing board may only discuss and vote on matters that are on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Agendas are posted a minimum of 24 hours in advance on the Mesa Public Schools website and in the Curriculum Services Center. Copies of tonight's agenda are located in the lobby. The public may speak on any item of business on the agenda that requires the board to take action. If you wish to comment on an action item, please complete a request to address the board form before the item is discussed. The form is located in the lobby. Members of the public will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Once recognized by the governing board president, please state your name. We ask that all speakers show respect and courtesy to others. During the second regular meeting of each month, the agenda will include a call to the public, which is an opportunity to speak to the governing board about a school district matter that is not on the agenda. Please submit a request to address the board form to participate in the call to the public. If you would like the board to consider adding an item to a future agenda, you may submit your request in writing to the board at least 5 working days before that meeting. The superintendent or governing board president will consider your request. Thank you for your attendance and involvement in tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is a review of that agenda, with that consent agenda item on tonight's agenda that board member requests to be changed. I have no request to speak on any of the consent agenda items, so I think we will leave that agenda as it is. A review of our governing board calendar, Dr. Forlis.
All righty, here we go. Coming up next, mark your calendars for September 15th and 29th. We have governing board candidate forums at 6 p.m. right here in this governing board room. On the 15th, the candidate forum is sponsored by the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, and on September 29th, sponsored by Mesa Public Schools. It will be live streamed, so we do have some limited seating in the room, but it will be live streamed for your viewing pleasure at home for whoever would like to join virtually. September 16th at 9:25 in the morning and again at 10:15. Fremont Junior High will have a Power of Education Assembly and featuring First Lady Ducey. So if you're able to join, please let Martha know so that she can properly notice that meeting. September 27th, we have a 5 o'clock executive session. That will be with the board and Mr. Rob Haas to start talking about superintendent's contract discussion, followed by dinner at 6 o'clock and a governing board meeting at 6:30. October 3rd through the 7th, mark your calendars. If you haven't already, that is fall break. Districts, offices, and schools will be closed and we'll have limited services throughout our district. October 11th, we've got a study session, and as we talked about during our study session this evening, that will feature our first quarter data from our FastBridge screeners, Social Emotional Learning Screener, School City Benchmark, and the Horizon Pre-ACT. So we know that we want to dedicate at least an hour to that conversation so that you have opportunity to ask questions and learn how our students are doing in the first quarter. That will be followed by the 6:30 governing board meeting. On October 17th, the ASBA county meeting, including the county director election, will be held. It will be at the Creighton Academy in Central Phoenix. So please let Martha know if you would like to attend, and she will make sure to submit your registration. Okay, here we go, October 25th. We do have an executive session at 5 o'clock to go over my first quarter check-in, followed by dinner and a governing board meeting at 6:30. And then I want to call your attention to November 5th. There is a community-wide event called Bend Not Break Tour at Bellbank Park. And this is focusing on, it will be a concert that brings families together to talk about the epidemic of suicide throughout our country, and specifically some data from here in the East Valley. So that sure to be a great event. It is on a Saturday. On November 8th, I want to call your attention. We have a board meeting scheduled on November 8th, but we know that that's also Election Day. So we are going to move our meeting from 6:30 start time to 5 o'clock. It will be a light agenda. And we want to make sure that everybody can get out in time to go vote should they need to, and or celebrate at election sites wherever you feel comfortable doing that. So just wanted to make sure that we got us through November 8th so everybody marks their calendars. That board meeting will start at 5 p.m. And that concludes, I think that gets us far enough into November.
Unsettling to me that we're already, we're to how. You're going to have pie before you know it, Mrs. Ellingson.
That's right.
According to this calendar, you're almost there.
You're just about there.
All right. Thank you very much. We're just going to turn that microphone right back to you for the superintendent update.
I will just keep going. Are we ready? Chad. All righty. I've got the clicker. We're all set. We talked quite a bit about, as we always do, but we talked quite a bit in our study session about our goal, our ultimate North Star is the Mesa Public School promise, to know our students by name, serve them by strength and need so that they graduate ready for college, career, and community, which is what guides the work that we do, and also is the backbone of my update to all of you. Also this evening, we've already talked about those 5 strategic goals wrapped around the portrait of a graduate. And I think it was a nice reminder that this is really the symbolism of the lens that's keeping us focused on our students. And that portrait of a graduate is what keeps all of our work student-centered. I'd like to share some celebrations with you this evening. First of all, I would like to congratulate Mr. Scott Thompson here to my left, and our Chief Financial Officer, Ken Alexander, and the entire financial services team. They have been awarded an amazing honor, and this isn't new to Mesa. Mesa Public Schools has received, here's the official title, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association, and the acronym that they use is GFOA. So I'll refer to it as GFOA in a bit, of the United States as well as Canada. The district earned the award for our comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2021. As I mentioned, Mesa Public Schools is not a stranger to this award. We have received this award annually for more than 30 years. So that's a lot for our governing board and community to be proud of. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. Its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. The GFOA is a nonprofit professional organization serving approximately 21,000 finance professionals. Financial reports are judged annually by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, including demonstrating a constructive and clearly communicated spirit of full disclosure. So I know that that is very important to our board as well as to our community. So I wanted to make sure that Mr. Thompson and Ken Alexander, who's probably watching from home, can celebrate with us along with all of your financial services team. As you know, I've got to show you some great things happening at Redbird Elementary. Last week, I was visiting with kindergarten and first grade students at Redbird Elementary, and they were getting a head start on STEM-based learning. I want to showcase this because this is the impact of the ESSER Innovation Grant that principal at the time, Dr. Cram, had written. And one of the things that they were noticing around their data was that they were having some challenges with tardies. And Redbird, if you know Redbird well, it's predominantly a walking school. So kids come, they're not dependent upon a bus to get them. So they were seeing a lot of tardies. So one of the things that they did is they started putting out games and play. So the first 15 minutes of school, they got to come in and play and have breakfast. It increased their attendance rate and decreased their tardy rate. So really intentional, and I've got to call out my friend here, Hayden, in the blue shirt. He had a bucket of straws and connectors, and I said, "What do you think you might make with that?" And the little girl next to him was making a circle. So because he was studying it, said, "What do you think you might make?" He says, "I'm thinking about a cube." I said, "Oh my gosh, if you could make an ice cube right now, I would love it. It's so hot outside." So I went over and talked to another group of children, came back, and here's Hayden making his cube. I said, "Hayden, tell me about how you decided how to make your cube." He said, "Well, if I put it around at my neck, I can see all the connectors better and make sure that it's really straight." So when you ask children why they do and how they learn, it's pretty amazing what you can learn by asking great questions. So lots of smiles at Redbird in the morning. Moving on to mathematics. Earlier on in a superintendent report, I shared with you a back-to-school kickoff around thinking classrooms. And here's evidence of this in action in Mrs. Swick's 4th and 5th grade students who are building a thinking classroom through mathematics. This is a 4th, 5th grade team, and they are sharing a roster of students and identifying exactly what students need and are grouping their students accordingly. So in random groups of 3 at vertical whiteboards, they worked in groups to calculate the value of their name based on a given point system. But it gets better than that. They quickly realized that the value of their number was impacted by the number of letters or where those letters were in the alphabet. One student was quick to point out, because I asked the question, I said, She's like, "Oh, my name has a really low point value." I said, "Well, what could you do to change that?" She says, "Well, if we reverse the order of the numbers to the letter, I would have the highest." So it was pretty amazing. And then the differentiation is this group of students were working with whole numbers. Her next group that was coming in that we're working at a little more sophisticated level, we're working with decimals. So same level, same type of engagement, but really intentionally planned mathematical instruction. Also at Redbird, kids are super excited by those ESSER-funded library books. And so their library resource specialist has the cart. As soon as the books come in, the kids know exactly where to go to look to find those new books. During my visit to Whittier, students in Miss Mowry's combined kindergarten and first grade class were practicing phonics using foundations. And so I think it's fun to be able to move from the dais into practice, and that we are very grateful for the governing board's investment in a consistent phonics program, kindergarten through 3rd grade. And here is evidence of this in action. You will see Mrs. Mowry, who is, she's using the alphabet cards and then bringing kids to the whiteboard and talking about sounds, and they're using some finger tracing to get from the letter to the actual sound. And as we know, the K-3 systematic program provides critical foundation skills, emphasizing phonemic awareness, phonics word study, high-frequency word study, reading fluency, vocabulary, comprehension strategies, handwriting, and spelling. And when talking with teachers, they're very excited about the ease of use of foundations, and will continue to celebrate the great work that is happening. Moving on to Whitman, 4 kindergarten teachers at Whitman Elementary are creating personalized learning for their students using the teacher teaming model. Students move between classrooms throughout the day to deepen their knowledge of literacy, math, and workplace skills such as creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. It was really interesting to talk to these 4 teachers here in the center. They are so proud of the work of their littles, and these are 5-year-olds, that are switching classes based on need, and really understand that all 4 of those teachers are their teacher. And you will see the right here, our little scholar here in the red shirt. Everything is completely organized and color coded so that they don't get lost. And if you looked really close, that pencil box, the coloring around the pencil box identifies the homeroom, and the little eraser pad that they have matches that. So everything is color coded and goes right back in, because they know that if kids separate from their materials, that could be a recipe for a meltdown. So they're keeping them highly engaged as they continue. Dynamic teacher. And here we go. Sports, fall sports are in full swing, so we're going to switch gears from our littles to our big kids on the courts. Interscholastic sports are back, and the stands are full with fellow students and families cheering them on. Students who are part of a team learn invaluable lessons of the skills and attributes found in our Mesa Public Schools Portrait of a Graduate. We constantly hear about collaboration and resiliency, and perfect evidence of what that looks like in our classrooms and on the field. Speaking of fields, we had the opportunity to dedicate the Field of Dreams. Here we go. Dobson, Skyline, and Westwood High Schools kicked off the football season with new synthetic turf fields. We are so grateful to our community and their support through bond dollars and our students, that our students now have a year-round access to high-quality fields. And being on those fields, you just feel a sense of professionalism, and they're what our kids deserve. So super proud of our community for providing that to them. We talked quite a bit about the next education workforce. I want to highlight 50 educators came together to Westwood High School to learn more about the next education workforce and what it looks like in practice. The 50 participants included staff from Mesa Public Schools, staff from Crane School District in Yuma, members of the teacher preparation team at ASU, and this is critical because they are seeing what this looks like in action, so that they are helping to work with pre-service teachers to understand what it means to teach in a teaching model. Also were members of the Gates Foundation and members of the Center for the Future of Arizona. They visited Stevenson, Whittier, and Westwood High Schools to learn more about the great work that our teachers are doing. We will have lots more tours throughout the year, and we're putting together a tour schedule so that we are being mindful of the demands of our staff as we continue to bring people through. Speaking of visitors, Superintendent Hoffman visited Westwood. She wanted to come in and take a look at some career technical education programs, and here you will see her in the engineering and advanced manufacturing program. What you don't see is that she's got her baby in a stroller right next to her, and every time the robot would throw a basketball, Clara would either clap or cry. So we couldn't decide which one was going to happen next. But these students are preparing for high-wage, high-demand careers that are so important. Oops, and here we go. So Chad, if you've got a minute, we're going to hit go. And with that, always lots to celebrate. We just provide just the highlights. So thank you so much.
Our favorite part of the meeting, hearing more and more about what happens in Mesa Public Schools. Other favorite part of the meeting is our recognition, and tonight we are getting to recognize a wonderful teacher from Skyline. Dr. Forlish, we'll meet you down front.
That sounds There we go. Is it on? Oh, here we go. As you mentioned, we have the opportunity to celebrate an amazing teacher this evening. Celebrating successes is one of the ways we ignite a culture of learning and well-being in Mesa Public Schools. We are committed to recognizing students, teachers, administrators, and staff for their achievements. So tonight, we will be honoring an exemplary teacher for her outstanding achievement. It is my pleasure to welcome our special guest from Skyline High School, who is a career technical education teacher, biotechnology instructor, career pathway coordinator, and the school's wildfire research project team leader. Get all of that in with a lot of commas. There we go. So will Miss Katie Gazda please join me at the podium? All right, I've got some juicy information for you. Starting off with, Katie Gazda is also known as Mama Nerd. So here we go. Mama Nerd received the 2022 National Sustainable Earth Educator Award, known as the acronym SEEA. Sustainable Earth is a sustainability, knowledge, and idea sharing site created to empower individuals, businesses, and educators to contribute to a more sustainable tomorrow. Sustainable Earth is a collaborative effort funded by Wells Fargo and developed by Arizona State University. Ms. Gazda is one of 19 educators from across the United States recognized for her innovative and creative educational programming designed to engage students in a sustainability-related topic. Now, you also need to know that Ms. Gazda is she's not a stranger to winning lots of awards. So this one is a super interesting one as we continue. Her award-winning project involved the research group traveling to various locations in Arizona that have experienced a wildland fire. Soil samples from the core of the fire and at various depths were collected. The group hopes to determine the best microbiome or mineral distribution for revegetation of areas left desolate from wildland fires. Skyline's Wildfire Research Project will be featured on the Sustainable Earth website to provide other educators and school administrators with ideas and best practices for integrating sustainability education into their curriculums. So we talked about earlier, always sharing those best practices is really how we learn so well. STEM teachers shape the future of our nation. They introduce students to exciting new concepts and offer a glimpse into what's possible. The very best educators transform learning into a boundless adventure and prepare their classes to explore new frontiers of technology for the good of us all. So please join me in congratulating Katie for being named Sustainable Earth Educator. And if you'd like to say a few words.
Well, thank you so much for the recognition, but as everyone in the room knows, teachers don't do it alone. And so I did ask a few people to come that I wanted to acknowledge because I organized it, but I didn't do the hard work. The students did the hard work. Like, they followed me into a desert where fires had been and dug in the ground because they trusted me with that, and I'm always grateful. Many of them were seniors and have graduated, but we had one outstanding freshman. She was a freshman last year. She's a sophomore this year. So, Emily, can you stand up? I always want to acknowledge the students and the hard work they did. And then, again, it's definitely never just me. We have an amazing classified staff all over the district. And the bioscience laboratory assistant, Miss Izzy Evans, if you wouldn't mind standing. she's really my secret weapon. She rereads every grant proposal. She puts the orders through. She catches me on all the crazy things when I try to double plan stuff. And so she makes the magic really happen. And again, that's really, I feel like all of our classified staff does that for us, right? And I also want to send a big thank you to CTE and the specialists who work there, especially my specialist, Randall Kirby, who couldn't be here tonight. No matter what crazy idea I have, he's always supported that, and he was great in this wildfire project and all other projects. But it's always a team, and so thank you for recognizing me, but I also wanted to recognize that great team.
Well, thank you, and the board would like to recognize you. And then we'll help Tim. Oh, Tim, do you want us to do a quick picture? Here we go. Good. You want to recognize? We'll do a group picture, and would you like your family? Yes, absolutely. Yes, come on up.
We kind of want to shake their hands.
Yeah, we're in a small group tonight.
You can start tomorrow.
Oh, here we go.
We're sliding in close. Really close. Or, yeah, I don't know. It's getting we can get.
Thank you.
Did we get you? We'll stay in the picture.
Come on, get your girls. There we go.
Thank you.
All right. Congratulations, Katie.
My other favorite part of the meeting is that sound when we all sit back down in our chairs, make that. Yeah, it's kind of a fun part of the meeting, you guys. We should mic that so you can hear it. Now, in honor of that recognition, we are so thrilled you came, and you are welcome to stay, but we also totally feel it's fine for you if you want to leave. So don't feel bad for us. I mean, feel bad for us. We're still here in a meeting, but you guys can go. So thank you. The next item on our agenda is an action item, item number 7. It's our personnel request. So, Mr. Wing, tell us a little bit about this.
Good evening, Governing Board. Tonight, Human Resources is recommending the Governing Board approve the personnel action request along with an addendum and a memo to the board regarding performance-based compensation system applied or applicable to our TSL grant that we were awarded last school year.
A motion to approve that personnel item.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Have a vote called by Cameo. Oh, any discussion? Questions? Sorry. All right, now we'll have a vote.
Kiana Sears, yay.
Passes 5-0. That was super speedy. You bragged to Martha about that one, Cameo. That was really good. That was really good. All right, next item 8 is our consent agenda items. Oh, I have a sticky to remind me. Thank you, Dr. Forlis. We have some staff members we want to remember.
Governing Board, tonight, with your approval of the personnel request, 2 of our employees were recognized as in memoriam, and I would like to take a moment to share just a few thoughts about each of them. Lisa Kupke, a career technical education teacher at Red Mountain High School. Lisa Kupke's teaching career in Mesa Public Schools impacted students from 4th grade to culinary arts. She was an innovative teacher who had high expectations in her classroom and helped students reach them. She truly valued hands-on, real-world application of learning. A former 4th grade student summed it up beautifully. Mrs. Kupke was my favorite teacher of all time. She was hilarious and so sweet. I felt so welcome in her class. And Susan Nobley, an instructional aide at Patterson Elementary School. In the 5 short months that Mrs. Nobley worked at Patterson Elementary, she made a big impact. While serving as a Title I instructional aide, her quiet and calming demeanor made it easy for students to learn from her. She especially enjoyed working with the younger students. We miss her sweet smile and easygoing personality. Thank you.
So many, our employees have lives and they have wide circles of influence, and we will miss those employees, and their people that they've impacted. We'll miss them much. Item 8 is our consent agenda item. All items listed will be considered as a group and will be approved with one motion. We have not had any requests to speak on any of these items, and no board member requested, so we will go from there. Do I have a motion to approve the consent?
So moved.
Hutchinson, and a second?
I'll second. Mrs. Sears, yay.
Passes 5-0 as well. Moving on to item 9, our policies. Tonight we have a first read of policy JLA. First read. Talk about it a little bit. Mrs. King.
Thank you, President Richardson. As you said, this is the first reading of policy JLA. This is a new policy that would authorize the superintendent or her designee to make school-based referrals to contracted community-based behavioral health service providers for services provided through Access, the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System, pursuant to the Children's Behavioral Health Services Fund, which was created in as part of Jake's Law passed by the legislature in March of 2020. The policy directs the superintendent to create procedures to ensure our compliance with Arizona Revised Statute Section 3436.01, including a process that would allow parents to opt out of these referrals, a survey for parents whose children have been referred, and a process to report survey results to Access not less than annually.
This is our opportunity to ask questions about this policy. Is there any questions by anyone on the board? I have a couple of questions. Just so, tell me why we need this kind of policy. Is it because of the law? Is it because of we have more partnerships we're dealing with, and we want to have a standardized way we report? What created the need for a new policy?
Legislature is requiring us to have a policy if we're going to do these community-based school-based referrals to our community behavioral partners. And since Mesa is currently doing these referrals,
Great.
have been for a couple of years, it was important that we have a policy in place. It's now required.
Public schools, we follow the law. That is a good way to do. So I can imagine a world where some parents are worried about privacy, student privacy with this. Tell me about that.
So our procedure, which will come in the form of a regulation, will provide that opt-out, so parents can opt out at the beginning of the school year if they don't ever wish for their student to be referred to such a program. If they don't opt out and a referral is made, the parent still needs to consent to receiving these services. So there are numerous steps of the way where parents are involved and making sure none of these services are provided without their consent.
Perfect. That's exactly what we want to know. Thank you very much. Any other questions or feedback on this? It'll come back for another read at our next board meeting where it'll be an action item. Is there any? It's a sign of good policy. Good job. All right. Thank you. All right. That was all that we need to do with that one. You guys, we are cruising through this. Let me scroll down to where we are. Next, we are on our proclamation. So it is a proclamation on Citizenship Day, and the Constitution Week. And Dr. O'Reilly, as our clerk, will read those proclamations for us.
Hey, whereas the United States celebrates the oldest written constitution in the world, and whereas Mesa Public Schools teaches students to respect and uphold the Constitution, civil rights and responsibilities, and whereas the Constitution's promise of freedom and opportunity has been a steadfast rock of national strength and stability, the Governing Board and Superintendent of Mesa Public Schools do hereby proclaim September 16th as Citizenship Day and September 16th through 22nd as Constitution Week. We encourage the community to join students and staff in observing this special day and week by reflecting on the importance of active citizenship and reaffirming the enduring strength of our Constitution.
Thank you, Dr. O'Reilly. Sorry, every time I go up, I have to scroll back down on this. I have a motion to approve the proclamation recognizing September 16th, 2022 as Citizenship Day and September 16th through the 22nd as Constitution Week.
I so move.
Thank you, Dr. O'Reilly. And a second.
I second.
Ellingson. We will call for our vote.
A by Mrs. Sears.
And we have a day and a week. So thank you. That vote passes 5-0. This is the part of the agenda that we call the Dr. O'Reilly Hour, because not only did he read the proclamation for us, but it is his turn to present to us some of his highlights as a board member on the Portrait of a Graduate. Dr. O'Reilly.
Okay, so I went out and visited a lot of schools, and I want to focus tonight on the cornerstone of our district, our teachers. So we're up with the slides. So I said, what teachers do I want to go see? And so I put the spotlight on teachers our seniors recognized as being the most significant impact on them. And so it's teachers and actually other staff as well. So our graduates actually shared hundreds of stories of great teachers who are having a great impact. And tonight I can just share a couple of them, but just know that there are hundreds of them, and some years thousands of them all around the district. And I should mention, as I went to talk to the teachers, the students remember the teachers remember the students. And I asked them, why do you get excited to come to school every day?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Dr. O'Reilly, can you pull your microphone closer or turn it on? We're not able to hear you.
Okay. So the teachers also remember the students. When asked what they liked about teaching, to a person they all said the kids. So it was, they loved the relationships with them, seeing them grow, helping them achieve hard things, as one teacher said. So Justin, it's our kids, and in an environment where they can help the kids thrive is really kind of our secret sauce for retaining teachers. So that's one thing I took away from visiting all these classrooms. So let me start with the teachers I visited. And the first one is Gwen Struble, who's a first grade teacher at Hale. And it's great going into a first grade class. The kids were all excited. They were working away as I went in there. There was she was caucusing with one student. The other ones were really busy working together. And there was like a hum in the whole class. The kids were really on task. Here's what the senior said about her. My first grade teacher, Ms. Struble, had the most positive effect on my education. Now, this is a graduating senior talking about his first grade teacher. I didn't realize this until now, but she was the one who jump-started my love for learning and knowledge, which continues to this day. She's such an engaging and caring teacher. So, jump-start of nursing, of learning, engaging, caring, and that's what we hear as we go through these. My next teacher is on the other end of the extreme. It's at a high school. So I went to Mesa High, and you hear comments about students and how teachers talk about how the teachers help students blossom. And Jim Brown at Mesa High is one such teacher. So when he was in college, as I was talking to him, he said, what what inspired me were two teachers that I had at ASU. And they really encouraged me to go into teaching English. And he's so grateful that they did that. And he really is returning the favor to the students he has now. And here's what one senior said about Mr. Brown. He taught me that I'm smarter than I know and the importance of initiative. In his class, I learned to not procrastinate and how to approach hard things with a good attitude. He encouraged me to do my best and cheered me on in everything. Even after I wasn't in his class anymore, he still came to wish us good luck on our AP tests and to check up on everyone's senior year. He's an amazing person in general and an absolutely amazing example of what teachers should be. So it's great going out to the schools. I did about 6 of them, but I know the board, and I told them all that the board really appreciates them. It wasn't just for me. The next teacher I went to, and this was a really fun one, J.C. Saltis at Bush Elementary. She's another elementary teacher whose impact was remembered years later. And when I arrived, her class was really actively learning, engaging, and she was expecting me, so the kids were all, oh, who's coming in here? And as you looked in the class, there were all these pictures of superheroes on the wall that she had drawn or had drawn. And the kids were telling me, oh, she's really into superheroes. So that was really her thing. So I told the class why I was there and started to read the seniors' comments. And as I started reading it, JC started getting teary-eyed. And maybe that's understatement, because all of a sudden the kids were all yelling, "Are you crying? Are you crying, Mrs. Saltis?" And one grabbed a tissue and ran and gave it to her. And that's the girl you see right there. So they were good tears. She was really moved by what the senior said. And the senior said, "She made me feel welcome and loved. She pushed me to be the best student always. Throughout my middle school and high school years, I did it all for her." And that's when she started crying, I think. She may not remember me, but I will forever remember her and the impact she had on my life. So, JC, in your classroom, not all supermen wear capes. So I'll just say that. The next one is Elizabeth Lund's class in Westwood. She's just in her 3rd year of teaching. And you see common themes here of really getting engaged with the students and caring about them, but holding them to high standards and getting them to learn. She's a natural at connecting with the Westwood students. And when I visited her class, the students were as awake and lively as high schoolers can be at the first thing in the morning. About 9:30 in the morning, they're not exactly the most active, but they were responding and active in her class, and they clearly liked being there. And here's what one senior said about her. And this was her 1st year of teaching. She didn't teach because it was her job, but because she wholeheartedly loves students and science. I didn't understand a topic. She made sure I understood it before the day ended. I didn't enjoy science as much as other subjects, but she made science interesting. I believe she's the perfect example of a teacher, what a teacher should be, even though it was just her 1st year of teaching. She's a role model for me. So it's very experienced teachers, new teachers have something very much in common in Mesa. Not all of the influential people are teachers. Oftentimes secretaries, custodians, security guards, principals, and others are often the most influential person. What's important, they have an influential person, probably more than what role that person plays. And at Longfellow, Esmeralda Cuevas is a media specialist. Some of her students are not yet fluent in English. And I was there, and she said, what she tells them is, I've been where you are. I've had to learn English. I was a struggling reader. But it gets better, and you can be where I am today. You can succeed much like I did. And so she's a role model. She's exemplary of Mesa staff who change the trajectory of students through their words and their example. And Esmeralda is a great example. And here's a quote from a student remembering. She got me on the right track. She pushed me to be better on my academics and challenged me. She always had my back, but was pushy at the same time. Ms. Cuevas changed my path, and now I'm actually graduating from high school. And talking to her, she talked about how in her room, in the media center, where she's a media center specialist, she has to keep kids on task, but then she's also out of the playground and interacts with the kids both ways. And that helps her relationship with both of them. It was a short meeting, so I figured I could do a couple more. So, okay. So this was a good one. When I asked Mr. Ron Bovic of Fremont Junior High if I could visit his classroom, he said, "Sure, I'd be happy to have you come. Before school, after school, or on my lunch hour." So he didn't say it, but his message was, "You can take my time, but my students' time? No way. That's protected time." And by the way, he arrives at 7:15, and Fremont was starting at 9:15. So don't say a teacher just works 6.5 hours. So, he said, I was in there talking to the students, and they're saying, well, and I was there early, but 3 kids were still in there getting their help from him. And he says he makes it fun. He makes math a lot of fun. And he said his motto is learning's mandatory, fun's optional. But there was a story problem there, and it had packages of diapers. And the kids had to figure out how many packages they needed in the story problem. But he took kids' faces from the class and put them on the diaper packages. And so the kids kind of got engaged, laughed about it. He did things to make it interesting. And on the wall behind him, and here you can see to the right, so many happy grams, so many comments from past students. He's gotten these certificates 3 other times. He's gotten other graduation invitations he has on the wall. Clearly, he's a Mason gem that's had a big impact on students. And here's what one student said. "He pushed me to be responsible. He saw potential in me. He was hard, but he gave me the motivation I needed. He encouraged me to come in and study with him and took the time to explain things in a way he knew I would understand. I've never had another teacher care as much. He deserves the world. Thank you for being awesome and different, and thank you for the pats on the head, LOL." And I would be remiss if I just said there were those 6. There were lots and lots of comments where people said, it's not just one teacher, it's many teachers. Many students say that as you read about it, and they say, I can't name one, and then they read off a list of a lot of influential teachers. And here's just one comment. "I had amazing teachers in my elementary school. I think they all played a vital part in who I am today. I had an amazing junior high teacher, and Mr. Webster helped me develop my love of science. I also had an amazing high school teacher for my creative writing class, Mr. Magnuson. These teachers and staff," and the student recognizes "and staff," "have helped me develop into who I am today and had an ability to reach further in and pull out my inner strengths." So that's the magic of teachers, and that's what I wanted to bring to the board tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Reilly. We're going to have you do all of the highlights. That was great.
I decline, thank you.
Oh, no. I just have that kind of power as the president. It's just you. All right. At this point in our regular scheduled meeting, we are going to reconvene our executive session, and we will vote to dismiss our meeting at the end of that executive session. So our regular meeting, for all intents and purposes, is over, because the only thing we will do back in regular meeting is dismiss. So thank you, and you guys are super excited that it is 7:20. You're welcome.